It really is, yeah. From the recruit side of it, what are the biggest barriers? What are the most frequent things that you're like, man, I think you're great for this job. I think you should pull the trigger and get in. What's the number one response that you hear and you're just like, come on.
So
I knew it. Every recruiter, this is all you got to do. Usually I just throw this grenade. I went to a recruiting event. I throw this grenade at a table at a bar one night. And I just sat back. I was like, let's go.
It's like my parents were, guilty of this as well. Like every parent tells their kid, you need to go to college, you need to get a job, that's going to do this. So every kid wants to do cyber, every kid wants to do medical, every kid wants to do, whatever. And it's like, dude, this isn't the cyber force. This isn't the med force. Like, this is the Air Force. Our job is to produce sorties and go out there and do the deal. Right. And then you've got aspect war that's, has nothing to do with generating sorties, but
not a bunch of nonners.
Bunch of nonners, dude.
The second time I think that's like the third appearance of the word nonner on this podcast. I love it.
I'm still over here going like,
no clue. I don't know who a nonner is. Am I a nonner? Is he a nonner?
So when I was in ALS, one of my best friends is a combat controller. I called him a nonner. And we had this back and forth, man. He was like, I'm not a nonner. And dude, he just got so fired up. I was giving him a hard time. I'm like, you are a nonner, dude. You don't produce anything.
Somebody called me a nonner, and I was like, okay, I don't even know what that means. And it made them so mad. Like, because like technically PJs were air crew for the longest. I think we still are air crew, but like they're like, oh yeah, you're an air crew, but you're a nonner. And I was like, okay. And I just went on with my life. And they were like, I called you a nonner. I was like, I don't care. I don't know what that is. You could have called me a flip flap, and I'd been like, oh, okay, yeah, it's it. I don't know.
My favorite thing about nonner is like everyone in the Air Force has their duty, right? The Air Force is about generating sorties. But the best thing about calling someone a nonner is that when you call them a nonner, they just go off the rails. Somebody they get all upset, and you're like, so then it's like, okay, now I'm going to twist this knife now that I know that this bothers you.
Right.
But
I think that's why the guy got so mad at me, because he expected some big reaction. I was just like, I don't care. Like, it was a helicopter, dude. I just went back to like getting gear ready in the back because we were about to fly on a sortie.
Right, I'm gonna go rescue this guy. Okay, so we good?
Yeah, we gotta go get into a gunfight real quick. But I mean, yeah. Well, do me a favor. When I call you, just come back in. All right.
Yeah.
How about that?
It's very rare that like you see, and nobody messes with the aspect war dudes, right? Everyone's,
Well, because we resort to violence as our like problem solving technique. That's why. Like, you might have this like funny back and forth. Like, half of my friends will just punch you in the face for it. They're like, I don't understand what you meant, but I'm going to start off by punching you.
I did no harm.
So, but I leverage that to like kids want to do cyber, they want to do medical, and I'm getting down to the nitty gritty of why do you want to do that? Well, it's the most civilian transferable skill. Intel's another big one. They're like, I want to go into Intel because I want to go to the FBI afterward. And I leverage my gunship experience where I'm going to be doing skill bridge here soon with a company called the Global Special Operations Forces Foundation, right? And the only reason that I even got in with them is because like I had SOF experience and I was a gunship guy. So when you look at it, you read the airforce.com, description of an aerial gunner, you're like, that has no civilian transferable skills. Well, it does. Every career field in the Air Force has a civilian transferable skill. So you might think that you want to do cyber because you can get out and go do whatever, right? But like people don't think about ammo, like, 2 Whiskey 031, right? Munitions. I have a good friend. He's a recruiter with me as well. As an E4 senior airman, he was building the internal navigation system on a GBU-39 small diameter bomb. He was an E4 in the Air Force on a team with Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman scientists that were developing this. So when I tell that, I was like, this dude was an E4, and all of a sudden these scientists are like, dude, you want to come join our team? Like, when do you get out of the Air Force? And you would never know that if you just read airforce.com munitions description. So that's kind of one of the biggest things that I see is kids want to get into something and they don't understand that everything in the Air Force has a civilian transferable skill. And so I have to spend a bunch of time kind of breaking down that barrier. And most kids normally kind of open up to it and they go tell their parents. Their parents are like, oh, I never thought about that. It's like, well, yeah, that's why it's my job as a recruiter to teach you that.
What are some other common mistakes that recruits make especially when they engage in kind of that very first those first couple contacts, I know that it's not make or break with everything, but I imagine that there are some times that are some very important kind of conversations that happen, especially in the early part. What are some mistakes that those recruits make?
Mistakes. A lot of people have this perception that we're just there, right? I'm just there to talk to you, right? And while yes, that is part of the job, like I'm one man and I cover 5,500 square miles. I have 27 schools I'm responsible for. So like I'm constantly out in the zone. I'm constantly out at schools. I could be at a school an hour and a half away, right? And people think they can just like walk up and open my door and ask me, how long is basic training? So the biggest mistake that I think a lot of recruits make is they don't do their research. They don't come prepared, right? So we as the Air Force, we're not like the Army, where the Army office right next to me has 6 recruiters, right? So there is constantly someone in their office to walk in, and you can just walk in and say, hey, tell me about the Army. And they have that time to do that. I'm in an office by myself. I have a spec ward recruiter in my office, but he's not like, his job is not to do general enlisted accessions like I do. So he's out doing his thing. I'm out doing my thing. People are trying to like open our door. And then all of a sudden we get this bad rap. The Air Force recruiter's never there. He doesn't answer my phone call. And I'm like, dude, I'm out doing stuff. I'm not just sitting at my desk waiting for you to come talk to me. So that's one thing. If like any potential recruits are listening to this, please do your research. Come prepared with questions, at least have some idea of what you want to talk about. Don't just come into my office and I'm like, all right, cool, man. Like, what questions do you have for me? And they're like, none. I'm like, dude, this is the first time you've ever talked to an Air Force personnel and you have no questions.
Right.
Like, give me a bone here.
Because they've been watching the podcast.
What's the day-to-day like? Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Careful what you wish for. We're going to send them there with a bunch of high-level questions that you're not prepared to answer. It's going to be great. You're going to sit there and just be like, damn, one's ready.
I like to say I get paid to talk, so help me earn my paycheck.
There you go.
Right?
I like it.
So